This case study examines what happens when military planning is built on assumptions rather than behavior. On Terthos 9, a coalition force faced not just an external threat, but an internal mismatch in how different systems respond under extreme pressure. This story explores decision-making, power dynamics, and why adaptability rooted in human behavior disrupted models that should have predicted failure.
The worst mistake of my entire military career was not understanding one simple fact about humans until it was far too late. They do not fight to win. They fight because something inside them breaks when they stop, and I learned this truth covered in blood that was not my own. Surrounded by soldiers who should have been dead 3 times over, watching them laugh while they reloaded their weapons for another impossible stand. My name is Vex Gorthane, and I had served in the Galactic Coalition Defense Forces for 23 cycles. 23 cycles of combat across 14 different war zones. I had faced the singing death of Proxima 7, survived the crystalline massacres on Helion Prime, and earned 4 valor commendations for actions that cost me half my original battalion. War was not new to me. Terror was not new to me. Or so I thought. The Krelthi swarm had been tearing through the outer colonies for 8 months, turning entire planets into feeding grounds for their endless chittering hordes. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They simply consumed everything in their path, stripping worlds down to bare rock before moving to the next target. Command estimated we had lost 47 million souls to their advance, and the number climbed daily. Every species in the coalition had committed forces to stop them. The Valtrine contributed their shield technology. The Morathian Empire sent their battle cruisers. My own people, the Kravathi, deployed our best shock troops and tactical units. And then there were the humans, the newest members of the coalition, barely a decade since first contact, a species so young they still fought wars among themselves on their homeworld. They had primitive faster-than-light travel, barely adequate energy weapons, and military doctrine that seemed to consist primarily of throwing bodies at problems until the problems went away. Command spoke of them with polite tolerance, the way one might discuss a child who insists on helping with adult tasks. When I received my orders for joint operations with a human military detachment, I made my displeasure known to my superiors. I had earned the right to serve with professionals, not babysit newcomers who probably could not tell a plasma rifle from a mining laser. My protests were noted and promptly ignored. Personnel shortages, they said. Critical need for experienced field commanders, they said. You will adapt, they said. I adapted. I always did. The forward base on Terthos 9 was a hastily constructed affair, prefabricated bunkers and defensive emplacements scattered across a rocky plateau that offered clear sightlines to the valleys below. This is where the Krelthi would come. This is where we would stop them. Or die trying. Probably the latter. If intelligence reports were accurate about the enemy force size. I arrived on a transport with 3 other Kravathi squad leaders, all of us equally thrilled about our new assignments. The human section of the base was immediately identifiable by the noise, music of all things, actual music blaring from portable speakers while soldiers cleaned weapons and reinforced positions. Laughter echoed between the bunkers. Someone was singing badly and loudly, about something called a fortunate son, whatever that meant. We Kravathi valued discipline, order, quiet focus before battle. These humans acted like they were preparing for a festival, not a fight against an enemy that had devoured entire star systems. My first impression of human soldiers did nothing to ease my concerns. They were small, barely reaching my chest height, with soft skin that looked like it would tear if you breathed on it too hard. Their equipment was a chaotic mix of official military gear and personal modifications that would have gotten any proper soldier court-martialed. One of them had attached what appeared to be a small stuffed animal to his helmet. A stuffed animal. In a combat zone. They moved wrong too. Not with the efficient energy-conserving gait of professional soldiers, but with an almost aggressive casualness. Loose. Unpredictable. Like they had not fully committed to taking any of this seriously. I reported to the command bunker where I met Captain Hendricks, a human female with short dark hair, and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to not smile. She greeted me with a firm handshake, a gesture I had been briefed about. Humans were very particular about their handshakes. Commander Thane, good to have you, she said, her accent thick with that peculiar human inflection. Your reputation precedes you. 23 cycles, 4 commendations. That is impressive by anyone's standards. Captain, I replied, keeping my tone professional. I understand we will be coordinating defensive operations against the expected Krelthi assault. That is the plan, she agreed, gesturing to a holographic display of the terrain. They will hit us in approximately 36 hours. Intel suggests somewhere between 50 and 70,000 hostiles in the first wave, 50 to 70,000. We had maybe 8,000 defenders total. The mathematics of survival were not favorable. I studied the human captain, waiting for some sign of fear, some acknowledgement of the impossible odds. Instead, she just kept smiling that strange, unsettling smile. We have held worse, she said, as if this was supposed to be reassuring. I did not believe her. Not then. Captain Hendricks assigned me to coordinate with Sergeant Dallas Reeves, the leader of 3rd Platoon's Alpha Squad. I found him behind the eastern bunker line, supervising the placement of automated gun turrets while simultaneously eating something that smelled vaguely toxic. He looked up as I approached, still chewing, and offered a casual salute that would have gotten him disciplined in any respectable military organization. Commander Thane, right? Dallas Reeves. Everyone just calls me Reeves. He extended his hand, and I took it, noting the calluses and scars that covered his palm. At least this one had seen real combat. Want a protein bar? Tastes like cardboard mixed with sadness, but it keeps you moving. I declined. My species had very different nutritional requirements, and I suspected human food would cause significant digestive distress. Reeves shrugged and took another bite, utterly unbothered. Your squad will hold the center line position, I explained, pulling up the tactical display on my wrist computer. When the Krelthi breach the valley perimeter, concentrated fire from elevated positions should slow their advance long enough for artillery to thin their numbers. Should, Reeves repeated, nodding slowly. I like how you say should. Like there is a chance this might actually go according to plan. You are new to fighting these bugs, or not you? I bristled at his casual tone. I have 23 cycles of combat experience across multiple theaters of war. I assure you, I understand tactical planning. Oh, I am sure you do, he said, and there was no mockery in his voice. Just a strange kind of knowing amusement. But plans are great until the enemy shows up. Then it is all improvisation and hoping nobody dies doing something stupid. He paused, while hoping not too many people die doing stupid things. This was not the kind of pre-battle discussion I was accustomed to. Where was the rigid confirmation of objectives? The formal acknowledgement of orders? Instead, Reeves acted like we were discussing recreational activities. Not a life-or-death defensive stand against an overwhelming enemy force. I met the rest of Alpha Squad over the next hour, and each encounter left me more confused about human military culture. There was Chen, a weapons specialist who had named all 3 of his rifles and spoke to them like they were pets. There was Rodriguez, a demolitions expert who kept making jokes about things blowing up in ways that seemed inappropriately enthusiastic. And there was Jackson, their medic, who seemed far too cheerful for someone whose job involved stopping people from bleeding to death. They communicated in a rapid-fire mixture of technical jargon, obscure references, and what I could only describe as aggressive affection. They insulted each other constantly, calling each other names that should have started fights, but everyone just laughed. When Rodriguez missed a shot during target practice, Chen called him something that my translator absolutely refused to process, and Rodriguez responded by laughing so hard he nearly dropped his weapon. Is this normal behavior for human soldiers? I asked Reeves during a quiet moment. He looked at me with those strange human eyes, so much white showing around the colored parts, making their expressions unsettlingly easy to read. What? The joking around? Yeah, pretty normal. Keeps the mood light. You go into a fight thinking about how you might die. You are already half dead. Better to go in laughing. That seems psychologically counterproductive, I said. Fear keeps soldiers alert. Caution keeps them alive. Maybe, Reeves admitted. But we have found that anger works better than fear. And you know what makes humans angry? Watching their friends die. So we joke. We bond. We become family. That way, when things go bad, we are not fighting to survive. We are fighting because we are pissed off that something tried to hurt our family. I did not understand. Not then. The pre-battle briefing took place in the main command bunker 6 hours before the estimated enemy arrival. Captain Hendricks laid out the situation with brutal honesty. We were outnumbered 7-1. The Krelthi did not tire, did not retreat, and did not stop until everything in front of them was dead. Reinforcements were 3 days away. Minimum. Our job was to hold this position for 72 hours. The other coalition species representatives looked grim. We all understood the mathematics. This was a delaying action, a sacrifice play. We would hold as long as possible, inflict maximum casualties, and probably die in the process. But we would buy time for civilian evacuations on the planets behind us. The humans, though. The humans looked almost eager. Not suicidal. Not reckless. Just ready. Like this was exactly the kind of fight they had been training for. We moved to the forward positions as the sun set over Terthos 9. The Cravathi moved with practiced efficiency, each soldier carrying standardized equipment, wearing regulation armor, maintaining proper formation spacing. We were professional. The humans scrambled over rocks, carrying wildly different weapon loadouts, wearing armor covered in personal modifications and what appeared to be handwritten messages. One soldier had written "Come and take it" across his chest plate in bright red letters. I did not understand the reference. Reeves caught me staring at it. Old human saying, from a war a long time ago, means we are not going anywhere, means if they want this ground, they are going to have to pry it from our cold, dead hands. That is not very optimistic, I observed. No, he agreed, checking his rifle one last time. But it is honest. The sun disappeared below the horizon, and somewhere in the darkness beyond our defensive line 50,000 Krelthi began their advance. The Krelthi came with the dawn exactly as intelligence predicted. They poured through the valley like a living flood, chittering and screaming in frequencies that made my skull ache even through my helmet's audio dampeners. Thousands of them, each one the size of a Cravathi, with blade-like limbs that could cut through standard body armor like it was paper. They moved fast, scuttling over rocks, and each other in their eagerness to reach us and tear us apart. Contact valley approach, mass formation. Someone called over the comm network. Unnecessary, really. We could all see them. You could probably see them from orbit. All units, hold fire until they reach the red markers, Captain Hendricks ordered, her voice calm despite the wall of death rushing toward us. Make every shot count. I crouched behind the reinforced barricade, my plasma rifle already charged and ready. Around me my Cravathi squad had taken up perfect firing positions, weapons aimed, breathing controlled. This was what we trained for. This was what we were good at. Disciplined, coordinated fire, maximum efficiency, minimum waste. The Krelthi hit the red markers, 600 meters out. The entire defensive line opened fire simultaneously. The sound was incredible. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, energy beams, all converging on the enemy advance. The front ranks of the Krelthi simply ceased to exist, vaporized or torn apart by the concentrated firepower. Bodies piled up. The charge faltered for about 10 seconds. Then the mass behind the dead simply climbed over the corpses and kept coming. They did not slow down. They did not care about casualties. They just kept coming. An endless tide of claws and teeth and hunger. Secondary batteries. Fire. Hendricks ordered. The automated turrets joined the chorus, adding their mechanical precision to the defensive barrage. More Krelthi died. More replaced them. This was going to be a long fight. I noticed the humans then. Really noticed them for the first time in combat. They fought with a controlled aggression that surprised me. Reeves was calling out targets, his squad responding with quick, accurate fire. Chen was cycling through his rifles, each one tuned for different ranges. Rodriguez was placing explosive charges at choke points, timing detonations to maximize enemy casualties. They were good, better than good. They were effective, but they were also loud. So incredibly loud. They shouted constantly, calling out targets, confirming kills, encouraging each other with language my translator kept flagging as inappropriate for military communications. One of them, Jackson the medic, was actually singing while he fired. Singing, in the middle of a firefight. Keep them honest, people, Reeves yelled over the gunfire. They do not get past this line. They do not get to the civilians behind us. We hold here. The Krelthi reached the 400-meter line. 300. 200. We were cutting them down by the hundreds, but there were thousands more behind them. The mathematics were not working in our favor. For every 10 we killed, 20 more appeared. Then, the artillery opened up. Morathian heavy guns firing from positions behind our lines. Explosions tore through the Krelthi formations, creating temporary gaps in their advance. But temporary was the key word. The gaps filled almost immediately. We fought for 2 hours. 2 hours of continuous fire, of overheating weapons and depleted ammunition reserves. The Krelthi corpses were piled so high in some places they created new walls, natural barriers that the living climbed to get closer to us. My squad was performing admirably, holding our section of the line with textbook precision. The humans were still singing. How did they have the energy to sing? Then everything went wrong. A second wave appeared on our eastern flank. Nobody had predicted a second wave. The intelligence estimate said 50 to 70,000 total. What came over that ridge was at least another 40,000. Fresh, and moving fast. They had flanked us, somehow. Impossibly, the Krelthi had flanked us. Eastern perimeter compromised. Someone shouted over the comm. They are breaking through. Repeat, eastern perimeter is compromised. I looked east and saw coalition soldiers falling back, their lines collapsing under the unexpected assault. The Vultrine shields were failing. The Morithian heavy troops were being overrun. Everything was falling apart. All units, strategic withdrawal to secondary defensive positions. Captain Hendricks ordered. Fighting retreat, people. Cover each other. Move. My training kicked in immediately. Strategic withdrawal. We had practiced this. You pulled back in stages, covering fire, leapfrog retreat. Minimize casualties while preserving combat effectiveness. I signaled my squad to begin the pullback, but the humans did not move. Third platoon, did you copy that order? Hendricks asked, her voice tight. We copied, Captain Reeves responded. Permission to disregard. Denied. Fall back to secondary positions. That is a direct order, Sergeant. With respect, ma'am, no. Reeves was still firing, methodical and precise. His entire squad was still at their positions, pouring fire into the Krelthi advance. If we pull back now, the whole eastern flank collapses. The Krelthi punch through. They hit the refugee transports before they can lift off. We hold here. You cannot hold there. You will be overrun in minutes. Then we better make those minutes count. Reeves switched his comm to the open channel. All coalition forces executing withdrawal. Alpha Squad is staying put. We will cover your retreat. Get to secondary positions. We will keep them busy. I stopped moving. This was insane. This was suicide. There were maybe 30 humans in that position, and thousands of Krelthi about to roll over them like a wave over sand. Reeves, you will die, I said, because someone had to state the obvious. Probably, he agreed, reloading his rifle with practiced ease. But not for free. Come on, you ugly bugs. Let me show you what angry looks like. The other coalition forces were retreating. Running, really. I should have been running too. Every tactical instinct I had screamed at me to fall back, to save my squad, to live to fight another day. But I could not stop watching the humans. They had not just stayed, they had moved forward, advancing into firing positions that gave them better angles on the Krelthi horde. They were outnumbered 100 to 1, maybe more, and they were laughing. Those crazy doomed fools were laughing. I made a decision that probably saved my life and definitely changed my understanding of the universe. I ordered my squad to halt the retreat and reinforce the human position. Half of them looked at me like I had lost my mind. The other half just started firing again. Good soldiers follow orders, even stupid ones. We took up positions alongside Alpha Squad, and that is when I got my first real look at humans in actual combat, not the organized, controlled engagement from before. This was something else entirely. This was humanity with the safety protocols removed. Chen's first rifle overheated. He dropped it without breaking stride, grabbed his second and kept firing. When that one ran dry, he grabbed the third. When that overheated too, he pulled out a sidearm. When the sidearm ran dry, he picked up a Krelthi blade limb from a corpse and started using it like a spear, against an enemy that killed with a single touch. Rodriguez was out of demolition charges, so he started making new ones. In the middle of combat, he was stripping power cells from damaged equipment, jury-rigging detonators from spare parts, and throwing together explosives that absolutely should not work but somehow did. Each time one went off in the Krelthi swarm, he whooped like he had just won a prize. Jackson, the medic, was doing two jobs at once. He would fire, drop his weapon, drag a wounded soldier to cover, apply emergency treatment, grab his weapon and start firing again, all while maintaining a running commentary that was half medical instruction and half what I can only describe as motivational insults. Stay with me, you are not dying on my watch, you are too ugly to die, I have got you, you are fine, walk it off. But Reeves was something else entirely. He had been hit twice. I saw it happen, once in the shoulder, once in the leg. Krelthi blades had cut clean through his armor. He should have been down, should have been screaming, should have been going into shock. Instead, he tied a tourniquet around his leg with one hand while still firing with the other, never stopped calling out targets, never stopped coordinating his squad's fire. Blood was running down his armor, and he just kept fighting. Reeves, you are badly wounded, I shouted over the chaos. I have been worse, he shouted back, which was clearly a lie because I could see bone through the gash in his leg. You need medical attention immediately. I need these bugs to stop trying to eat my friends, he corrected, dropping an empty magazine and slamming in a fresh one. Medical attention can wait. Jackson, how is Private Morris? Stable. Jackson called back. Flesh wound? He will live. Then he can shoot. Get him back on the line. This was madness. This was completely contrary to every principle of combat medicine and personnel management. Wounded soldiers were supposed to be evacuated, treated, removed from combat effectiveness calculations, but Morrison grabbed his rifle and started firing again. One arm in a hasty bandage, the other working the trigger. The Krelthi kept coming. They were at 100 meters now. 50. Close enough that I could smell them, that horrible rotting meat stench they carried. Close enough that their screaming drowned out everything else. Fix bayonets, Reeves ordered. And I thought I had misheard him through my translator, but no. The humans were actually attaching blades to their rifles, preparing for hand-to-hand combat, against an enemy that specialized in close-quarters butchery. You cannot be serious, I said. They get past our firing line, we need a backup plan, Reeves explained, his voice still somehow calm. The backup plan is sharp objects and bad attitudes. A Krelthi broke through, scuttling over the barricade directly at Chen. He shot it twice, but it kept coming, so he drove his bayonet through its head, kicked the body off and went back to shooting the next one. Casual, like he had done this 1,000 times before.
Maybe he had.
More broke through. The line was collapsing. We were seconds away from being overwhelmed. This was it. This was how we died. Then something changed in the humans. I felt it before I understood it. A shift in their energy, their focus. They stopped fighting like soldiers following orders and started fighting like cornered predators. The joking stopped. The singing stopped. What replaced it was worse. Silence, focus, and a kind of cold fury that made my blood run ice cold. Chen ran out of ammunition entirely. He used his rifle as a club. When the rifle broke, he used his fists. His bare fists against armored, bladed killing machines. And he was winning. Rodriguez got grabbed by a Krelthi, those blade limbs cutting into his armor. He should have died right there. Instead, he pulled the creature closer, jammed a half-finished explosive into its mouth and detonated it point blank. The blast threw him backwards, his armor scorched and cracked. He got up and started fighting again. This was not possible. The human body could not sustain this level of damage and continue functioning. But they did. They just kept getting up, kept fighting, kept holding that impossible line. I finally understood what I was seeing. Humans did not have the strongest armor. They did not have the best weapons. They did not have superior tactics or overwhelming numbers. What they had was something that could not be measured or predicted or defended against. They had the absolute unshakable refusal to quit. It was not bravery. Bravery is feeling fear and acting anyway. This was beyond that. This was a species that had looked at the concept of surrender and decided it simply did not apply to them. They would fight until they won or until they were physically incapable of moving, and even then they would keep trying. A Krelthi blade caught Reeves across the chest, a blow that should have killed him instantly. He stumbled, went down on one knee. I thought that was it. Finally, the human limits had been reached. He looked at the wound, looked at the Krelthi that had struck him, and smiled. Actually smiled. Blood on his teeth. My turn, he said, and shot it in the face. The Krelthi advance faltered. For the first time since the battle began, they hesitated, and in that moment of hesitation, I realized something terrifying. The Krelthi were afraid. These mindless eating machines, these unstoppable swarms that had consumed entire planets, were afraid of 30 humans who refused to die. Our artillery, which had been targeting the main force, redirected to support our position. Morethian heavy guns turned the valley in front of us into a kill zone. The Krelthi that had flanked us found themselves trapped between our position and the secondary defensive line. Caught in a crossfire, they could not escape. The tide turned. It did not turn because of superior strategy. It did not turn because of overwhelming firepower. It turned because 30 humans decided that this particular piece of ground was theirs, and nothing in the universe was going to take it from them. When the shooting finally stopped, when the last Krelthi had been cut down or driven back, I looked at the human position. They were all still standing, every single one of them. Some were holding each other up, some were barely conscious, but they were standing. Reeves caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up, a human gesture of success. His armor was destroyed, his body was a mess of wounds, and he was grinning like he had just had the time of his life. Not bad for a first time working together, he said. Same time tomorrow. I could not find words. My translator probably could not have handled them. Anyway, the battle lasted 16 more hours after that. 16 hours of continuous fighting as the Krelthi threw wave after wave at our positions, each one breaking against our defensive line like water against stone. The humans held. They always held. When the Krelthi finally retreated, when the last of their forces pulled back into the wastelands beyond the valley, we counted our losses. The coalition had suffered 38% casualties overall. Significant, but within acceptable parameters for a defensive engagement of this scale. We had held long enough for the reinforcements to arrive. The civilian transports had escaped. By every military metric, this was a victory. I found Reeves in the medical tent, finally allowing Jackson to properly treat his wounds. The medic was working with efficient speed, muttering complaints about stubborn sergeants and death wishes. Reeves bore it all with patient amusement. "You should be dead," I said, because it needed to be said. Multiple times over, "You should be dead." "Yeah, probably," Reeves agreed, wincing as Jackson applied something that hissed against his burns. "But I had things to do, people to keep alive. You know how it is." "I do not actually. No other species fights like you do. We retreat when the odds are impossible. We preserve forces for future engagements. We accept tactical defeats to achieve strategic victories. You just refuse to lose." Reeves considered this for a moment. "I guess that is accurate. Humans are not good at accepting things we do not like. Someone tells us something is impossible. Our first instinct is to prove them wrong. You tell us we cannot hold a position. We will die trying. And usually we do not die. We are funny that way." Chen walked past, his arms in slings covered in bandages. He was eating something and complaining about the quality of the rations. Rodriguez was right behind him, arguing that the rations were fine and that Chen had no taste. Both of them looked like they had been through a meat grinder. Both of them were laughing. "Why do you laugh?" I asked. "You nearly died. All of you nearly died. Why does that bring you joy?" "Because we did not die," Reeves said simply. "We won. Our friends are alive. The civilians got away. That is worth celebrating. Tomorrow we might die. Next week we might die. But today we won. So we laugh. We joke. We enjoy being alive while we still are. What is the alternative? Being miserable. We tried that as a species. Did not work out. This works better." Captain Hendricks entered the tent, looking as exhausted as I felt. She nodded to Reeves. "Good work out there, Sergeant. I am putting you and your squad in for commendations. Just doing the job, ma'am." She turned to me. "Commander Thane, I read your report. You stayed when you could have retreated. Your squad helped hold the line. That took courage. It took insanity," I corrected. "But I learned something important today." "What is that?" I looked at the humans around me. Wounded, exhausted. Already joking about the next battle. Terrifying in ways that had nothing to do with weapons or tactics. I learned that the most dangerous thing in this galaxy is not the Krelthi swarm or the singing death or any other threat we have faced. The most dangerous thing is a human who has decided that something matters. Because they will not stop. They cannot stop. They will fight with weapons, then with tools, then with their bare hands, then with their teeth if necessary. And they will smile while doing it. Reeves grinned at that, showing those blunt human teeth that should not be threatening but somehow were. "Now you are getting it, Commander. Now you understand." I did understand. Finally, terribly. I understood. Humans were not strong because of their technology or their tactics. They were strong because they had turned stubbornness into an art form. Because they had made refusing to quit into a biological imperative. The Krelthi would come again. Other threats would emerge. The galaxy was a dangerous place full of species that wanted to kill us, but we had humans on our side now. And I almost felt sorry for our enemies. Almost.
Terra 9 shows how systems built on numbers and probabilities often fail to account for human behavior under extreme pressure. Here, the outcome was shaped less by tactics and more by which group continued to follow the model and which group abandoned it entirely. In this scenario, decision-making shifted from calculation to commitment, exposing a critical blind spot in conventional prediction frameworks.